So, everyone knows the story about how you met Pops.
Yeah, it's on a tape somewhere.
It's on a tape somewhere. Yeah, you've told it a number of times.
I love it. I just love this story.
When you saw him, I was told you coordinated dances for your school.
What?
You coordinated dances. Did you start the dances? Who was it? Let me see. Lori said that's Tucson. Maybe I got my notes mixed up here. I think Patty had mentioned something about you starting the dances.
Well, this was in high school.
In high school, yeah. But did you meet? You met Pops at a? How did you meet? Okay, tell us the story how you met Pops.
He came down the aisle, the hallway of college.
Right.
I was my junior year, and I'd gone with this guy for 3 years. Another heave a sigh. And I cared for him tremendously. Mm-hmm. But I was a junior. Not who got married in those days? You just didn't. The world was out there and the opportunities and all this stuff. So I didn't have a date. He was at college for 3 years with me, and we went to all the dances together. I had a date, just a built-in date. No, he didn't come back to school in my junior year. Yeah. He was reserve at Fort Lewis and had been for years. It gave him a little pocket money, and he even felt that they were reorganizing. He was in the cavalry, and of course you can't have the horses in the Second World War,
right? And
it was modernized. So he went to the tanks. That's what they did with the cavalry. They turned those guys into the mobile, gas-driven horses.
Yeah.
And he was in tanks, and they were stepping up their training. So he couldn't come back to college that year. So I was without a date. Oh. And it's a small school. There were 500 people in that whole building. And we knew everybody in the whole place. And we knew who went with who. So I didn't have a date for anything. The barn dance was coming up. You've got to have a date for the first big dance of, of the season, as we called it. Here came a perfect stranger walking down, and I thought, oh my gosh, gorgeous, handsome, sassy looking. I knew he was older. We just knew things in those days, so he wasn't an underclassman. Right. You hardly even looked, although a guy was good looking and could dance. You made no arrangements or didn't lay any traps for an underclassman. Right. But I knew this guy was older. It turns out he's an underclassman, but he's older, and that was all right, because he was coming in for his sophomore year. And so I thought, and that's when I first saw him. Oh. And I laid my trap. I had my what did I call it earlier? I had myself together. I knew how to operate.
Yeah.
he got operated on.
So you started dating Pops then?
How did that happen? He couldn't. He already had a date for the barn dance, and so I couldn't go to the barn dance with him. But I played a crazy trick, and I didn't have a date. But I went with Marilyn and her date, and because she went to, how was it? Anyway, we went to the barn dance, but I just went for the ride. Yeah. So I wandered around the barn dance all over the place, and I would dance with, I'd go to one of my girlfriends and say, oh, I'm going to dance with Bob. Can I? Oh, yeah, sure, da-da-da. So I danced around, but not all the time, because they were with their dates. And then there was a guy that, younger than I, and I didn't care because he had a red convertible. And he had the girl had a fight with him, because he went across the highway and coughed down a few, and he was getting not out of hand in any way, but she didn't like it.
Yeah.
They had a big fight. Now I'm going home with my brother, and I heard the fight, and I knew the guy, Frank Donahue. So I went up to him and I said, "Frank, you and I are together." And he was younger by a couple of years in school. And I said, "You and I are together." That was fine. He could dance, I could dance, so we danced around. And so he took me home because the girl was gone.
Right.
So I was at the barn dance. But while we were there, Daddy came and danced. We got his date to dance with someone else, and he came on and danced. He said, "Now that we're here," he says, "I got to nail something down," or something like that. And the next dance that was coming up was the the fall, not prom. We call it something else, but it was a long dress, corsage, not necessarily tuxedo, business suit type dance. And I knew what it was like. I'm a junior now. I've been to them all.
Yeah.
And he said, "I want to nail that down. Will you go?" And I said, gave it a few moments hesitation and left him dangling for a moment. I guess it would be a nice idea. I was perfectly casual about it. Are you kidding? Yeah, so that was it.
And that was it. And then that's when you and Pops became an item, as
Yes,
it were.
we were an item. We were all over. Betty Kummer, one of my bridesmaids, finally, forever, and the godmother of Thomas, wrote. She was the gossip columnist, and she was terrible. I couldn't be in it all, but she watched this because her date was Daddy's. One of his best friends. They lived right close together on the hill. And her date, whom she finally married, were buddies. And we'd go to dances together. Yeah.
Wow.
Depending who was drinking more. Yeah.
So, and Pops was in the military at that time?
No,
he hadn't joined?
He worked at Boeing when his father was ill. He left school, and everybody in the family had to go to work. Betty went to work, Bob did. I think he was already teaching, but Betty went to work, and that's where she met the doctor, because she worked in a doctor's office, and the doctor was Fitzmaurice. But Daddy went to Boeing to work and bring home the money because the old gentleman was ill and unable. And what did I start to say? Oh, so he's around airplanes.
Yeah.
So when he gets a little money, and he knew the people on the field, to learn how to fly. So he learned to fly when I was at school, a junior, and he was a sophomore at college. And he was learning to fly, and he did.
Oh.
He got his solo, and he was just a natural. Bill was still around. He attested to that to me, because that's another long story. But he loved flying, and so when the war did come, he volunteered for the Air Force, of course.
Right.
And so he didn't come back to school, obviously. Let me think. He went, how did he go? March. Well, he didn't, and there was no, and I didn't go back to school. I never finished college.
Oh.
I didn't go back I wasn't going to go through this again. I think we were practically engaged. I'd have to get into, I know when it happened, but it's going to take me too long to figure it out here. But I didn't want to go through that again. And I'd had it.
Yeah.
And in those days, you didn't have to have a degree. You got married and you had kids. There were a few career women around, but that was never me.
Yeah.
I liked history. I was going to be a history teacher if I had to support myself. But by that time, Daddy and I were together, and we wanted kids, so you couldn't have a career in those days and kids.
And yeah.
It was just too complicated. So that's the way it went. Okay.
It will stop.